The dashboard clock read 9:47 p.m. when James Chen noticed the flashing red and blue lights in his rearview mirror. He'd been driving for the past 6 hours, coming back from his mother's place in Memphis, and honestly, he was ready to get home. The highway was nearly empty at this hour, just the occasional truck passing by and the sound of tires on asphalt. James pulled over onto the shoulder, putting his hazards on like he'd done 100 times before. Nothing to worry about. Probably a taillight out or something minor. After 15 years in special operations with Delta Force, very little made him nervous anymore. But he believed in respect and following the rules, especially when it came to law enforcement. He'd worked alongside plenty of good cops during his military career. 2 officers approached his vehicle, one on each side. James rolled down his window and kept both hands visible on the steering wheel. Basic stuff. The officer on the driver's side was tall, maybe in his mid-30s, with a buzz cut and a permanent scowl. His nameplate read Officer Briggs. The other one, younger and stockier, positioned himself near the passenger window, hand resting on his belt. "License and registration," Briggs said. "No greeting, no explanation. Just the demand." "Evening, officer," James replied calmly. "Can I ask what the problem is?" "I'll ask the questions. License and registration." "Now." James noticed the tone but didn't react. "Sure, no problem. My license is in my wallet in my back pocket, and the registration is in the glove box. I'm going to reach for them now, okay?" Briggs nodded slightly. James moved slowly, deliberately, retrieving both documents and handing them over. The officer took them back to his patrol car, leaving James sitting there with the younger officer still watching him from the passenger side. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. James checked his phone, seeing messages from his girlfriend asking when he'd be home. The officer was taking way longer than necessary to run a simple check. Something felt off. When Briggs finally returned, his attitude had shifted. He seemed even more hostile now, almost like he was looking for trouble. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. James kept his voice level. "Officer, can you tell me why you pulled me over?" "Your taillight's out. Now step out of the vehicle." "With respect, sir, I can fix a taillight issue. Is there anything else?" "Are you refusing to comply?" Briggs's hand moved toward his belt. James knew better than to escalate. "No, sir. I'm complying. I just want to understand what's happening." He opened the door and stepped out, keeping his movement smooth and predictable. Years of training had taught him how to read situations and stay calm under pressure. The younger officer moved in closer. Briggs circled around James like he was sizing him up. "You military?" he asked, noticing James's posture and bearing. "Yes, sir. Army. Just got back from leave visiting family." "Army, huh?" Briggs exchanged a look with his partner. "Think you're tough? Think you're better than us?" The question caught James off guard. "Not at all, officer. I have great respect for law enforcement." "Sure you do." Briggs stepped closer, invading his personal space. "Here's what I think. I think I smell marijuana coming from your vehicle." James's heart rate didn't change, but his mind shifted into tactical mode. This was a lie, and they both knew it. He didn't smoke, never had. "Officer, there's no marijuana in my vehicle. I don't use drugs." "Well, we're going to search and find out." "I don't consent to a search," James said clearly, pulling out his phone. "But I won't physically stop you. I'm going to record this interaction for both our protection." Briggs's face darkened. "Put that phone away." "Sir, I have the legal right to record this traffic stop. I'm not interfering with your duties. I'm standing here, complying with your orders, but I'm documenting this encounter." The younger officer spoke up for the first time. "Briggs, maybe we should just—" "Shut it, Thompson." Briggs turned back to James. "You're real smart, aren't you? Probably one of those guys who thinks he knows the law." "I just know my rights, officer. I served my country to protect these rights." "Your rights?" Briggs laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're on my road now, in my county. Your rights are what I say they are." James felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool night air. He'd faced enemy combatants in some of the most dangerous places on Earth, but this moment felt different, This was America. This was supposed to be different. Briggs and Thompson began searching his vehicle anyway, pulling out his overnight bag, going through his glove compartment, checking under the seats. James stood there, phone recording, stating clearly and calmly every few minutes that he did not consent to this search. They found nothing, of course, just clothes, some snacks, a book, and his military gear bag in the trunk. But Briggs wasn't done. He wrote up 3 citations: the broken taillight, failure to signal when changing lanes, and an equipment violation for a supposedly cracked windshield that James knew was fine. "That's $600 in fines," Briggs said, handing over the tickets with a smirk. "Welcome to Cedar County." James took the citations without argument. "Thank you, officer." "And let me give you some advice, soldier boy." Briggs leaned in close. "You might want to watch yourself around here. We don't take kindly to troublemakers. People who think they're special. You understand what I'm saying?" James looked him directly in the eye. "I understand perfectly, officer." "Good. Now get out of here before I find something else to cite you for." James got back in his vehicle, hands steady, despite the adrenaline pumping through his system. He waited for the patrol cars to leave first, then sat there for a moment in silence. 20 minutes. That's how long the entire encounter had lasted, but it felt like hours. He looked down at his phone, still recording. He had everything. Every word, every action, every unconstitutional moment of that stop. In combat, he'd been trained to gather intelligence, document enemy movements, and build cases based on evidence. This wasn't that different. As he pulled back onto the highway, James's mind was already working through what had just happened. This wasn't about a broken taillight. This was about 2 officers who thought they could abuse their authority without consequences. They'd picked the wrong person to intimidate. James had spent his entire adult life defending his country against threats. He'd faced down terrorists, completed impossible missions, and led men through situations where failure meant death. But he'd never imagined he'd need those skills back home, on an American highway, dealing with the very people who were supposed to protect and serve. The phone recording ended automatically as his storage filled up. James saved the file, backed it up to the cloud, and sent a copy to his personal email. Evidence, documentation, that's what this would take. He had $600 in bogus, fines, and a story that probably dozens of other people in Cedar County could tell. The difference was James knew how to fight back. Not with his fists, not with violence, but with something far more powerful. The truth, properly documented and strategically deployed. As the lights of Cedar County faded in his rearview mirror, James made a decision. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Officers Briggs and Thompson had just made a critical mistake. They'd crossed a line with someone who understood discipline, strategy, and the long game, and James Chen always completed his missions. James didn't sleep well that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those flashing lights and heard Officer Briggs's voice telling him his rights were whatever they decided. By 6 in the morning, he was already up, coffee in hand, reviewing the footage from his phone. Watching it back was even worse than living through it. The way Briggs had circled him like prey, the false claim about smelling marijuana, the illegal search, the thinly veiled threat at the end, it was all there, crystal clear. James had dealt with corrupt officials before in other countries during his deployments, but seeing it happen here on American soil hit different. He spent the morning researching. First, he looked up the Cedar County Sheriff's Department website. Standard stuff, mission statements about serving the community, protecting citizens, maintaining integrity. The usual words that looked good on paper. Then he dug deeper, searching for news articles about the department. That's when things got interesting. 3 months ago, there was a small piece in the local paper about a lawsuit being settled quietly. The details were vague, but it involved allegations of excessive force and unlawful detention. The officers' names weren't mentioned, but the settlement amount was $50,000. Paid with taxpayer money, of course. James kept digging. Public records showed 4 other settlements in the past 2 years, all involving the Cedar County Sheriff's Department. None of the articles named specific officers, but the pattern was clear. This wasn't just two bad cops having a bad night. This was systematic. By noon, James had filed a formal complaint through the department's website. He attached the video, wrote a detailed account of what happened, and submitted it. He didn't expect much, but he wanted it on record. Documentation was everything. 2 days later, he got a generic email response. Your complaint has been received and will be investigated by our Internal Affairs Division. We take all allegations seriously. You will be contacted if we need additional information. James decided to take a different approach. He drove to the Cedar County Veterans of Foreign Wars post that Thursday evening. The VFW Hall was an old brick building on Main Street, the kind of place where guys who'd served gathered to share stories and watch football. He wasn't a regular, but he'd stopped by once or twice when he first moved to the area. Inside, about 15 veterans were scattered around, some playing pool, others at the bar. James recognized a few faces. There was Danny Rodriguez, a Marine who'd done tours in Iraq, Kevin Patterson, Army National Guard, a few others he'd met briefly. Hey, James, Danny called out. Haven't seen you in a while. Beer? Sure, thanks. James settled onto a bar stool. Actually, I wanted to ask you guys something. Any of you ever have trouble with the local cops? Specifically, officers named Briggs and Thompson? The room got quiet. Danny and Kevin exchanged a look. Why do you ask? Kevin said carefully. James told them what happened. As he talked, he watched their faces change from neutral to knowing, like they'd heard this story before. When he finished, Danny let out a long breath. Man, I wish I could say I'm surprised, Danny said. Briggs pulled me over about 8 months ago, same deal. Said my tags were expired when they weren't. Wanted to search my car. I had my kids in the back seat and he still tried to intimidate me. Did you file a complaint? James asked. Yeah. Never heard back. My buddy told me to just let it go. That making waves in a small county like this only makes things worse. Kevin jumped in. Thompson got me last year. Pulled me over for swerving, which was total garbage. I'd had exactly 0 drinks, but he made me do the field sobriety test anyway. Made me stand there on the side of the road for 30 minutes while he ran my license 5 times. I think he was hoping I'd get frustrated and say something he could arrest me for. A older veteran named Frank spoke up from the corner. They got my nephew too. Kid's 22, just finished his first deployment with the Navy. Came home on leave, got pulled over by those two. They tore his car apart looking for drugs. Found nothing, obviously, but they kept him there for over an hour. Kid was so shaken up he almost didn't want to come back to visit. James felt his jaw tighten. So this is a pattern. Why hasn't anyone done anything about it? What are we supposed to do? Danny said. We're just regular people. They're cops. The department protects its own. That's how it works. Not if we document everything properly, James said. Not if we build a case that's so solid they can't ignore it. Over the next hour, James explained his idea. Use the same approach special operations used for gathering intelligence. Document every interaction. Keep detailed records. Find everyone who'd had similar experiences. Build a comprehensive file that couldn't be swept under the rug. I know a lawyer, Kevin said slowly. Lisa Chen, no relation, I assume. He looked at James, who shook his head. She does civil rights work. Been in town about 5 years. She might be interested in this. James got the lawyer's contact information. The next morning, he called her office. The receptionist put him through after he mentioned it was about police misconduct in Cedar County. Mr. Chen, this is Lisa Chen. I understand you want to talk about the sheriff's department? James gave her the short version. When he finished, there was a pause on the other end of the line. Can you come to my office today? She asked. I think we need to talk in person. 2 hours later, James sat in a small office downtown. Lisa was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and professional. She had a file folder on her desk and it wasn't thin. I'm going to be straight with you, she said. I've been trying to build a case against officers Briggs and Thompson for 2 years. The problem is most people are too scared to come forward. The ones who do often back out when they realize how much pressure gets applied. What kind of pressure? Getting pulled over repeatedly. Having code enforcement suddenly interested in their property. Friends and family getting hassled. Small-town politics can be nasty, Mr. Chen. These guys have been with the department for almost 10 years. They have friends in the system. James leaned forward. I have video evidence. Clear footage of an illegal search, false probable cause, and what amounts to a threat. And I'm not easily intimidated. Lisa's expression changed. Can I see the video? James pulled out his phone and showed her. She watched in silence, occasionally making notes. When it finished, she sat back in her chair. This is good. Really good. But one case won't be enough. We need to show a pattern of behavior. Multiple victims, multiple incidents, all documented. I've already found 4 other veterans who've had similar experiences, James said. And I'm betting there are more people out there who aren't veterans. Regular citizens who got hassled and never spoke up. There are, Lisa confirmed. I have statements from 7 people. The problem is, most of them don't have video evidence. It becomes he said, she said, and the department sides with its officers every time. James thought for a moment. What if we teach people how to document these encounters? What if we organize the community to know their rights and record everything legally? That would help. But it would also paint a target on your back. Are you prepared for that? James had faced down armed insurgents in hostile territory. He'd led missions behind enemy lines where one mistake meant death. A couple of small-town cops didn't scare him. I've been in worse situations, he said simply. Lisa smiled for the first time. I believe you have. Okay, let's do this properly. I'll start organizing the legal case. You work on community outreach and documentation. We'll meet weekly to coordinate. But Mr. Chen, I need to warn you, this won't be quick and it won't be easy. The right things never are, James replied. Over the next 2 weeks, James became a man on a mission. He organized meetings at the VFW hall, teaching people how to properly record police interactions, what their rights were, and how to stay calm under pressure. He created a secure online forum where people could submit their stories anonymously. The response shocked him. Within 10 days, 17 people had come forward with detailed accounts of harassment, illegal searches, and intimidation by Briggs and Thompson. Some were veterans, but many were just ordinary citizens. A single mother who got pulled over 3 times in 1 month. A black college student who was stopped for looking suspicious in his own neighborhood. An elderly couple whose car was searched after they didn't answer questions fast enough. Each story made James more determined. This wasn't just about his one bad experience. This was about a systemic abuse of power that had gone unchecked for years. He was reviewing the latest submissions one evening when his phone rang. Unknown number. Is this James Chen? A gruff voice asked. It is. Who's this? Someone who wants to help. I'm a deputy with Cedar County. Not all of us are like Briggs and Thompson. Meet me tomorrow at Fletcher's Diner, 1 p.m. Come alone. I'll be wearing a blue jacket. The line went dead before James could respond. He stared at his phone, weighing the possibilities. It could be a setup, or it could be exactly what they needed. Someone on the inside willing to talk. Either way, James would be there. He'd learned a long time ago that the best intelligence often came from unexpected sources, and right now he needed every advantage he could get. Fletcher's Diner sat on the edge of town, the kind of place with checkered floors and chrome stools that hadn't changed since the 1970s. James arrived 15 minutes early, a habit from his military days. Never walk into a meeting without checking the terrain first. He ordered coffee and took a booth in the back corner where he could see both entrances. The lunch crowd was thinning out, just a few regulars at the counter and an elderly couple by the window. At exactly 1 p.m., a man in a blue jacket walked through the door. He was in his late 40s, gray touching his temples, with the weathered look of someone who'd spent years on patrol. He scanned the room, spotted James, and walked over without hesitation. Deputy Tom Warren, he said quietly, sliding into the booth across from James. I've got about 30 minutes before anyone notices I'm gone. Appreciate you reaching out, James said. Can I ask why? Tom looked down at his coffee cup, which the waitress had automatically filled. Because I'm tired of watching good cops get a bad name because of guys like Briggs and Thompson. I've been with the department 22 years. I signed up to help people, not to watch bullies with badges terrorize the community. So you know about them? Everyone knows, Tom said. But knowing and proving are 2 different things. They're careful around supervisors. They choose their targets strategically. People passing through, minorities, veterans like yourself who they think might push back and give them an excuse to escalate. They're smart about it. James leaned forward. How long has this been going on? Years. I'd say it started about 6 or 7 years ago when Briggs made senior deputy. Thompson was a rookie, and Briggs basically mentored him into being a miniature version of himself. The department settled at least 5 lawsuits that I know of, maybe more that were kept really quiet. Why hasn't the sheriff done anything? Tom's laugh was bitter. Sheriff Crowley? He's up for re-election every 4 years. Briggs's uncle is on the county commission. Thompson's dad owns the biggest construction company in 3 counties. Those two have more political protection than you can imagine. Crowley's not going to touch them unless he absolutely has to. What if we gave him no choice? That's why I'm here. Tom pulled out a flash drive from his jacket pocket. I've been keeping copies. Dash cam footage that mysteriously got lost before it could be used in complaints. Internal reports that were buried. Witness statements that disappeared. I couldn't do anything with it alone. I'd lose my job and my pension. But if someone outside the department had this information, James took the flash drive carefully like it was a live grenade. In a way it was. This could end your career. Maybe. But doing nothing was ending something worse, my ability to look at myself in the mirror. Tom checked his watch. There's something else you need to know. Briggs and Thompson are aware of what you're doing. The community meetings, the lawyer, all of it. This is a small county. Word travels. Let them know, James said. I'm not hiding. That's the problem. They're going to come after you. Hard. It's what they do when someone challenges them. They'll pull you over every chance they get looking for any tiny violation. They'll try to provoke you into doing something they can arrest you for. I can handle myself. I'm sure you can. But these guys don't fight fair, just watch yourself. Tom stood up. Don't contact me again. If I find anything else useful, I'll get it to your lawyer. And Mr. Chen? Thank you for doing what a lot of us have wanted to do for years. He left $40 on the table for a $15 lunch and walked out. James sat there for a moment, feeling the weight of the flash drive in his pocket. This changed everything. That evening, James met with Lisa at her office. She called in a tech specialist to verify the files were legitimate and not tampered with. What they found was even worse than James expected. 17 dash cam videos showing illegal searches, excessive force, and constitutional violations. Internal affairs reports that recommended discipline, but were overridden by higher-ups. Complaints from citizens that were marked unfounded without proper investigation. It was a systematic pattern of abuse and cover-up. This is enough, Lisa said, her eyes bright with something between anger and excitement. This is enough to take to the state police and possibly the FBI. We're talking about civil rights violations on a massive scale. How long until we can act? James asked. I need a week to organize everything properly. We go public with this, we need to do it right. One shot. If we mess this up, they'll circle the wagons and we'll never get another chance. James agreed. 1 week. He could wait 1 week. Except Briggs and Thompson couldn't wait that long to make their next move. 3 days later, James was driving home from the grocery store when he saw the lights. Again. He pulled over on a busy street in broad daylight, phone already recording before his car even stopped. Both officers approached, and this time they weren't even pretending to be professional. Well, well, Briggs said. Look who we have here. The troublemaker. Good afternoon, officers. James kept his voice steady. What's the reason for the stop? You rolled through that stop sign back there. I came to a complete stop, officer. My dash cam recorded it. James had installed front and rear cameras after the first incident. Briggs's jaw tightened. You calling me a liar? I'm saying there may be a misunderstanding. My camera footage can clear it up. Thompson moved to the passenger side, hand on his weapon. Step out of the vehicle. On what grounds, officer? Because I'm telling you to. James took a breath. He could feel the tension, knew they were trying to provoke him. Officers, I'm going to comply, but I want to state clearly that I'm questioning the legal basis for this stop and this order. I'm not resisting, but I am invoking my rights. He stepped out slowly. By now, a small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. Someone was filming on their phone. Good. Witnesses. You think you're smart? Briggs stepped close, voice low, running around, talking to people, filing your little complaints. You're making a lot of people unhappy. I'm exercising my constitutional rights, James replied calmly. Your rights? Thompson laughed. Man, you really don't get how things work around here, do you? I understand perfectly how things are supposed to work, James said. And I understand that what you're doing right now is harassment and intimidation. Briggs moved even closer. clearly trying to make James react. Careful with your words, soldier boy. You wouldn't want to add threatening an officer to your list of problems. I haven't threatened anyone. You have multiple witnesses here who can confirm that. A woman from the crowd called out, I'm recording this. Everyone can see what you're doing. Briggs turned, irritated. Ma'am, step back or you'll be arrested for interfering. I'm on a public sidewalk, she said firmly. I have the right to film. More phones came out. James counted at least 5 people recording now. The officers realized they'd lost control of the situation. You're free to go, Briggs said suddenly. This time. But we'll be watching you. Every move. Every mistake. And trust me, you'll slip up eventually. Everyone does. James got back in his car, hands steady despite the adrenaline. As he drove away, he checked his mirror and saw the officers talking to each other, clearly frustrated. That evening, James's phone blew up. The videos from the street had already been posted online. Local social media was buzzing about it. The local newspaper called asking for a comment. Even a TV station from the state capital reached out. This is good, Lisa said when he called her. Public pressure is exactly what we need. But James, this is also going to accelerate things. They're not going to back down now. It's become personal for them. It became personal when they violated my rights, James replied. I'm not backing down either. The next day, James was pulled over again. Different officers this time, but the same department. They cited him for a cracked windshield that wasn't cracked and tinted windows that met legal specifications. $200 more in bogus tickets. The day after that, another stop. Allegedly driving too slow in the left lane. Another citation. In 5 days, James was pulled over 4 times. Each time he remained calm, professional, and recorded everything. Each time the officers seemed more frustrated that they couldn't provoke him into a mistake. Lisa filed a harassment complaint with the state police. The local TV station did a story about the pattern of stops. The video of the confrontation with Briggs had been viewed over 50,000 times. Cedar County was waking up to what had been happening in their community. And the people who'd been silent for years were starting to find their voices. At the weekly meeting at the VFW hall, attendance had doubled. People were bringing friends, family members, anyone who'd had similar experiences. Danny had organized a phone tree. Kevin was coordinating with other veterans groups across the state. This is bigger than we thought, Kevin said. I've been hearing from people in 3 other counties about similar problems. It's not just Cedar County. James stood in front of the group looking at the faces of ordinary people who were tired of being pushed around. Teachers, mechanics, nurses, retirees. Good people who just wanted to live their lives without fear. Here's what we're going to do, James said. We're going to document everything. Every interaction, every stop, every violation. We're building a case that's so airtight they won't be able to ignore it. And we're going to do it the right way. Legally, peacefully, and with absolute proof. An older man in the back raised his hand. What if they come after us too? Then we record that too, James said simply. The truth is our weapon. Light is the best disinfectant. They've operated in the shadows for too long. We're going to shine a spotlight so bright they won't have anywhere to hide. The room erupted in applause. James felt the energy shift. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about a community standing up and saying enough was enough. His phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Federal investigators want to meet tomorrow. Bring everything you have, James smiled. The mission was entering its next phase. And he never left a mission unfinished. The FBI field office was 2 hours away in the state capital. James made the drive with Lisa, both of them carrying boxes of evidence that represented months of documentation and dozens of victims' stories. The building was modern glass and steel, a far cry from the small-town politics of Cedar County. Special Agent Rebecca Torres met them in a conference room on the 3rd floor. She was in her mid-30s, professional and direct in a way that reminded James of the best officers he'd served with overseas. Mr. Chen, Ms. Chen, she said, shaking their hands. No relation, I understand. Just a coincidence, Lisa confirmed. Well, you've certainly made waves in Cedar County. I've been reviewing the preliminary materials you sent over. It's extensive. For the next 3 hours, they walked through everything. The videos, the dash cam footage from Deputy Warren, the pattern of complaints, the settlements paid by the county. Agent Torres took notes, asked pointed questions, and occasionally stopped to replay certain videos. This is a clear pattern of civil rights violations, she said finally. Color of law abuses, unlawful searches, intimidation, the Question is whether we can prove it was systematic and whether the department leadership was complicit in covering it up. The flash drive from Deputy Warren shows internal affairs. Reports being overridden, Lisa pointed out. That's evidence of institutional knowledge and deliberate inaction. Agent Torres nodded. We'll need to interview Deputy Warren officially. Can you facilitate that? He's risking his career by coming forward, James said. But I think he will. He's a good cop stuck in a bad system. There are more like him, Agent Torres said. There usually are. Once we start applying pressure, others will come forward. They always do when they realize they're not alone. She leaned back in her chair. Here's what happens next. We open a formal investigation. That means interviewing witnesses, subpoenaing records, and possibly having undercover agents conduct their own traffic stops in the area to document behavior. This process takes time. We're talking months, not weeks. James felt frustration building. Meanwhile, Briggs and Thompson keep doing what they're doing? Unfortunately, yes. Unless they do something so egregious that we have grounds for immediate arrest. But Mr. Chen, I need you to understand something. You've become a target. These officers know you're the center of this effort. They're going to escalate. They already have, James said, pulling out his latest stack of citations. 4 traffic stops in 5 days. All bogus violations. That actually helps our case, Agent Torres said. It shows a pattern of retaliation against someone exercising their First Amendment rights. Keep documenting everything. And Mr. Chen? Don't give them any legitimate reason to arrest you. No mistakes. I never make mistakes I can't recover from, James replied. The drive back to Cedar County was quiet. Lisa broke the silence about halfway home. You know they're going to make their move soon, right? They can't let this stand. It's gone too public and their egos won't let them back down. I know, James said. I'm counting on it. That's what worries me. James didn't respond. He'd been in enough high-stakes situations to recognize the pattern. Briggs and Thompson were cornered, and cornered people did desperate things. The question wasn't if they'd escalate, but when and how badly. The answer came 2 days later. James was driving home from a community meeting at the library where he'd taught a group of 30 people about their rights during traffic stops. It was almost 10 p.m. and the roads were empty. He saw the lights before he even left the town limits. Not one patrol car this time. 3. James pulled over, feeling his heartbeat steady into that familiar combat rhythm, calm, focused, ready. He activated his dash cam, his phone camera, and the backup recorder he'd started keeping in his shirt pocket. Whatever was about to happen, it would be documented from multiple angles. Briggs and Thompson approached from opposite sides, just like the first time. But now there were 4 other officers hanging back, watching. An audience or backup, James wasn't sure which. Out of the vehicle, Briggs ordered. No preamble this time. What's the reason for the stop, officer? Get out of the car now or we'll remove you. James stepped out slowly, hands visible. I'm complying, but I'm asking for the legal basis of this stop. I have the right to know why I'm being detained. You were swerving, Thompson said. We suspect impaired driving. I haven't had anything to drink. I'm happy to submit to a breathalyzer test. We'll decide what test you take, Briggs said. He moved closer and James could see something in his eyes. Desperation mixed with anger. You've caused a lot of problems, Chen. Made a lot of accusations. Gotten a lot of people stirred up over nothing. I've documented civil rights violations and reported them through proper channels. That's not causing problems, that's being a responsible citizen. Responsible? Thompson laughed. You're a troublemaker hiding behind a camera and a fancy lawyer. One of the other officers shifted uncomfortably. James recognized him. He'd been at the stop 3 days ago where the crowd had gathered. He looked like he didn't want to be here. Officers, whatever you're planning to do here, you should know that this is being recorded from multiple angles. There are also people who know where I am and when to expect me home. If I don't check in, is that a threat? Briggs cut him off. It's a statement of fact. I'm taking precautions because I've been subjected to ongoing harassment by your department. Briggs grabbed James's arm roughly. You're under arrest for obstruction of justice and resisting arrest. I haven't obstructed anything and I'm not resisting. I'm complying with all lawful orders while exercising my right to question unlawful detention. Shut up. Thompson moved in, reaching for his handcuffs. Then headlights appeared from both directions. 2 vehicles pulled up. One was Danny's truck, the other belonged to Kevin. They must have been following him from the meeting, James realized. Watching his back, more headlights appeared. Someone had used the phone tree. Within minutes, there were a dozen cars pulled over. People getting out with phones raised. "Everyone stay back," Briggs shouted. "This is official police business." "We're not interfering," Danny called out. "We're observing." "That's all right." A news van pulled up. James recognized the reporter from the local TV station that had been covering the story. Her cameraman was already filming. Briggs looked around, clearly trying to figure out how this had spiraled out of his control. His grip on James's arm loosened slightly. "Sir," one of the other officers said quietly. "Maybe we should—" "I know what I'm doing," Briggs snapped. But he didn't. James could see it in his face. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. They were used to operating in the shadows, targeting isolated people who couldn't fight back. Now they were in the spotlight with witnesses everywhere and cameras recording every move. "Officer Briggs," James said calmly, "you can arrest me if you want, but we both know these charges won't stand. And we both know that every second of this encounter is being documented. So the question is, how do you want this to end?" A sergeant pulled up, someone James hadn't seen before. He took one look at the scene, the crowd, the cameras, the TV crew, and his face went pale. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "Sir, we stopped this suspect for erratic driving," Briggs started. "I can see what's happening." The sergeant cut him off. He looked at James. "Mr. Chen, I recognize you from the news coverage. Have you consumed any alcohol or drugs tonight?" "No, sir." "I'm happy to submit to any test." The sergeant pulled out a breathalyzer. James blew into it. 0.0. The sergeant checked his eyes with a pen light. Completely sober, he was swerving. Thompson tried. "His dash cam will show if he was or wasn't," the sergeant said. "Mr. Chen, you're free to go." "Sir, we're in the middle of an arrest," Briggs protested. "No, you're not. There's no probable cause here, and you know it." The sergeant turned to Briggs and Thompson. "Both of you return to the station now. We'll discuss this there." For a moment, James thought Briggs might refuse. His face was red, his fists clenched. But the sergeant outranked him, and there were too many witnesses. "This isn't over," Briggs said quietly as he passed James. "No, it isn't," James agreed. The crowd stayed until all the patrol cars had left. The reporter interviewed James on camera, asking him about the pattern of stops in the federal investigation. He kept his answers measured and factual, letting the footage speak for itself. Danny clapped him on the shoulder. "Man, when you didn't answer your check-in text, we figured something was up." "Good thing we came." "Good thing," James agreed. His hands were finally shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off. "Thank you. All of you." "That's what brothers do," Kevin said. "You'd do the same for us." James got home after midnight. There were 17 voicemails waiting. 3 from Lisa, 5 from other media outlets, 2 from people wanting to share their own stories, and 1 from a number he didn't recognize. He played that last one. "Mr. Chen, this is Sheriff Crowley. I think we need to have a conversation. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., my office. Just you and me, no lawyers, no cameras. I think it's time we cleared the air about what's been happening in my county." James saved the message and forwarded it to Lisa. Then he sat down at his kitchen table and reviewed the footage from tonight. Every angle showed the same thing. Officers attempting an unlawful arrest with no probable cause, only backing down when public pressure made it impossible to continue. He thought about the sergeant who'd intervened. That was interesting. Someone in the department had finally decided that protecting Briggs and Thompson wasn't worth the cost anymore. The walls were closing in on them. James could feel it. Tomorrow's meeting with the sheriff would tell him whether the department was ready to do the right thing, or if they'd dig in and fight. Either way, James was ready. He'd been in tighter spots than this. The difference was, this time he wasn't fighting in some distant country for abstract principles. He was fighting here at home, for the rights and dignity of his neighbors and community, and that made this mission more important than any he'd ever undertaken overseas. He texted Lisa. "Got the sheriff's message. I'll go, but I want you on standby. If this goes sideways, I need you ready to move." Her response came immediately. "Already planning for it. Be careful tomorrow. Cornered animals are dangerous." James looked at his phone, then at the stack of evidence files on his table, then out the window at the quiet street where he lived. Somewhere out there, Briggs and Thompson were planning their next move. So was the sheriff. So were federal investigators. The next 24 hours would determine everything. James set his alarm and tried to get some sleep. Tomorrow, one way or another, this would start to end. James arrived at the sheriff's department at 8:45, 15 minutes early as always. Lisa was parked across the street in her car, phone ready. Danny and Kevin were at the diner 2 blocks away. If James didn't text them within an hour, they had instructions to come in with cameras rolling. The receptionist looked uncomfortable when she saw him. "Mr. Chen, the sheriff is expecting you." "Go ahead back." Sheriff Crowley's office was exactly what James expected. Wood paneling, awards on the walls, photos with local politicians, a large desk that seemed designed to intimidate. The sheriff himself was in his late 50s, gray-haired, with the kind of weathered face that came from years of dealing with difficult situations. "Mr. Chen, thank you for coming." He didn't offer a handshake. "Close the door and have a seat." James sat, keeping his posture relaxed but alert. "You wanted to talk, Sheriff. I'm listening." Crowley leaned back in his chair, studying James for a long moment. "You've caused quite a stir in my county. Federal investigators poking around, media attention, community meetings, all over a traffic stop. All over multiple civil rights violations," James corrected, "by officers with a documented history of abuse that your department has ignored for years. You don't pull punches, do you? I learned in the military that direct communication saves lives. I see no reason to change that approach now." The sheriff pulled out a file from his desk. It was thick. "I've been reading the reports. All of them. The ones you filed, the ones from other citizens, the internal affairs investigations, the settlements we've paid. I've also watched the videos from last night. And I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place." Crowley rubbed his face. "Officers Briggs and Thompson have family connections in this county. Political connections. The kind that make a sheriff's life very difficult if he goes against them. So you've known all along what they were doing. I've known there were complaints. I've known there were problems. But knowing and being able to act on it are 2 different things in a small county where everyone's connected to everyone else." James felt his jaw tighten. "That's not an excuse, Sheriff. You took an oath." "You think I don't know that?" Crowley's voice rose slightly. "You think I sleep well at night knowing good officers get painted with the same brush as bad ones because I couldn't clean house? But you don't understand small-town politics. Mr. Chen, you don't understand what happens when you go against the wrong families. I understand that children of those wrong families should still have constitutional rights," James said. "I understand that a single mother shouldn't be terrified every time she sees a patrol car. I understand that veterans who served this country shouldn't be harassed on the same streets they fought to protect." The sheriff was quiet for a moment. "The FBI came to see me yesterday." "Did you know that?" "I assumed they would. They have enough evidence to bring federal charges. Civil rights violations under color of law. It's serious. Prison serious. And they're not just looking at Briggs and Thompson anymore. They're looking at the whole department, including me, for failing to act on known complaints." James said nothing, letting the sheriff work through it. "So here's where we are," Crowley continued. "I can fight this, protect my officers, and probably end up in federal court myself. Or I can do what I should have done years ago." He pulled out 2 more folders. "These are termination papers for Officers Briggs and Thompson, effective immediately. I'm also placing 3 supervisors on administrative leave pending investigation for their role in covering up complaints." "That's a start," James said carefully. "There's more. I'm implementing a new oversight system. Body cameras for all officers, mandatory activation during every interaction, a citizen review board with real authority, quarterly training on constitutional rights and de-escalation. And I'm bringing in Deputy Warren to head up internal affairs, someone who actually gives a damn about doing the right thing." James studied the sheriff's face. The man looked tired, defeated even. But there was something else there too. "Maybe relief, why now?" James asked. "Why not a year ago when you first knew there was a problem?" "Because a year ago nobody was watching. Nobody was holding me accountable. It was easier to let sleeping dogs lie and hope things would work themselves out." Crowley met his eyes. "You forced my hand, Mr. Chen. You made it impossible for me to look away, and I'm not sure whether to thank you or curse you for it." "Thank me," James said simply, "because this isn't about you or me. It's about every person in this county who deserves to be treated with dignity and respect by the people sworn to protect them." The sheriff nodded slowly. "The FBI still wants their investigation. I can't stop that. But if I cooperate fully, if I show we're taking real action to fix this, they might focus on the actual perpetrators rather than burning down the whole department. What about the victims? The people who were harassed, illegally searched, intimidated? The county attorney is setting up a fund. Anyone with a documented case will be compensated. We're also offering to expunge any citations issued by Briggs or Thompson that were found to be without merit. That's almost 200 cases over the past 5 years. James felt something shift in his chest. This was more than he'd expected. Real change. Actual accountability. I want it in writing, he said. All of it. And I want it made public. You'll have it by the end of the day. Crowley stood up, and this time he did offer his hand. I won't pretend we're friends, Mr. Chen, and I won't pretend I'm happy about how this went down. But you did something I couldn't or wouldn't do. You stood up when it mattered. That takes guts. James shook his hand. It takes caring about something bigger than yourself, Sheriff. That's all. The news broke that afternoon. Officers Briggs and Thompson terminated for cause. Federal investigation ongoing. Department reforms announced. The local TV station ran the story as their lead. By evening, it had been picked up by state media. By the next morning, national news outlets were calling it a model for police accountability. James's phone didn't stop ringing for 3 days. Interview requests, speaking opportunities, other communities asking for help with their own problem officers. He turned down most of them, but he did agree to one thing, working with Lisa to create a handbook on documenting police interactions and advocating for reform through proper channels. 2 weeks later, the VFW hall was packed for what James had started calling Community Rights Night. Over 100 people showed up, from teenagers to retirees, all wanting to learn how to protect themselves and their neighbors. The thing you need to understand, James told the crowd, is that this wasn't about me being some kind of hero. I'm not. I'm just someone who knew my rights and refused to be intimidated. Every single person in this room has that same power. An elderly woman raised her hand. But Mr. Chen, you had military training. You knew how to handle confrontation. Most of us don't. The most important training I had wasn't about handling confrontation, James replied. It was about discipline, about staying calm under pressure, about documenting everything, about following through on your mission. Those aren't military skills, they're life skills. Anyone can learn them. Kevin stood up from the back. And you don't have to do it alone. That's what community means. When James was getting pulled over repeatedly, we showed up. When others were afraid to come forward, we supported them. Together, we're stronger than any bully with a badge. The crowd applauded. James saw faces he recognized. People who'd shared their own stories of harassment, others who'd just been too afraid before. They weren't afraid anymore. After the meeting, Deputy Warren approached James. He was in civilian clothes. He'd been promoted to Internal Affairs Director, just as the sheriff promised. Wanted to thank you, Warren said. I've been carrying around the weight of what was happening for years. Felt helpless. You showed me that one person standing up could make a difference. You stood up too, James reminded him. That flash drive you gave me? That was the turning point. That was courage, and maybe, but you started it. You didn't back down even when they tried to make your life hell. James smiled. I was trained never to leave a mission incomplete. This was my mission. 3 months after that first traffic stop, James received an official letter from the Department of Justice. Officers Briggs and Thompson had been indicted on federal civil rights charges. They were facing up to 10 years in prison. The letter also thanked James for his cooperation and noted that his actions had led to reforms not just in Cedar County, but in 3 neighboring counties as well. Lisa framed the letter and hung it in her office. You know what this represents, she said. It represents every person who was too scared to fight back, every complaint that was buried, every right that was violated. You gave them all a voice. We gave them a voice, James corrected. This was never just me, but it had started with him, with one person refusing to accept that his rights were negotiable. With someone who understood that real strength wasn't about physical power, it was about moral courage. 6 months later, James stood in front of a much larger crowd at the state capitol. He'd been invited to speak at a police reform conference, sharing lessons learned from the Cedar County case. In the audience were police chiefs, civil rights attorneys, community activists, and ordinary citizens, all working toward the same goal.